Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our topic of reproduction, the human way. Now, we all know the story, right? Sperm meets egg, they fall in love, and 9 months later, you have a baby. Well, of course, we can explain that in a more scientific way using what we've already learned about reproduction. So, to begin with, a human reproduction is sexual in nature. Alright, it's not asexual reproduction. Human reproduction is sexual, and that's what makes it exciting. And because it's sexual reproduction, it involves the fusion of a male gamete and a female gamete. And more specifically, it involves the fusion of the nucleus of the male gamete, which contains a haploid number of chromosomes, and the nucleus of a female gamete, which contains a haploid number of chromosomes, and they fuse together to form a zygote, which then has a diploid number of chromosomes. Diploid meaning 2 sets of chromosomes. And this process of fusing together is known as fertilization. Right, so in humans, the male gamete, of course, is the sperm, and the female gamete is the egg. Now, we all know the story, we all know all this, but when it comes to reproduction, sometimes this topic can be rather awkward, right? But, we're going to make it through together and try to have as few awkward moments as possible. So what we're going to look at in this topic? Well, under reproduction in humans, we're going to look at it in 3 parts. The first part, we're going to look at the act of sexual intercourse all the way to the stage of fertilization. So we're going to look at the structure of the male and female reproductive systems, talk about fertilization, and then we're going to also talk about the menstrual cycle. Next, we're going to talk about how the baby grows, how does the embryo develop, and what are the structures that support that. And finally, we'll give a bit of time to sexually transmitted infections, such as HIV. And before you know it, you'll be an expert in sex, or a sexpert. Well, anyway, let's get going. So we'll begin by looking at the structure of the male and female reproductive systems. Okay, so our learning objectives is to know what is the structure and the function of the male and female reproductive system, and you can find it on these textbook pages. Now, as we go through this topic, you'll find that some of the things already sound very familiar because you've already learnt it at lower secondary. However, in Sec 4, we're going to go a bit more into detail in certain parts, so it's good to see where you can add on that knowledge onto what you already know. Alright, so let's get going. So here's our male reproductive system to begin with. Now, you'll need to know how this looks like from the front and also from the side, and you need to know how to label such diagrams. So there are quite a number of parts in the male reproductive system. It might look a bit overwhelming, but don't worry, we're going to go through them one at a time. Alright, so first we look at the testis, alright, or what you guys like to call the balls. Alright, but let's be more scientific here. So this is the testis, this is a testis, the plural is testes, and together the testis produce sperm, that's the very important function, and secondly they also produce the male hormone testosterone, the male sex hormone testosterone. For what? Well, testosterone is important for many things in men, but one of the things is the development of certain secondary sexual characteristics at puberty. The testes receive blood from vessels found in this structure here called the spermatic cord. Now, this spermatic cord is not just blood vessels, okay, it also contains some connective tissue, and you can see that it kind of helps to suspend your testis in place. And without this spermatic cord, the testis would just droop all the way down or drop out. Right? And here's a spermatic cord, and in some people with some problems, the spermatic cord sometimes gets a bit twisted, and so the blood flow to the testis will be reduced, and you can think of what problems that result in sperm production, etc. Okay. Now, surrounding the testis, we have several structures. Firstly, we have what is called the epididymis over here. This is basically a coiled tube, and it helps to store sperm temporarily, okay, inactive sperm. which is just waiting to leave the male reproductive system. First, it's stored in the epididymis. Secondly, we have a very important structure called the scrotum. This is what you can actually see from the outside. It's a sac, a little bag, holds your testis in place. And importantly, it actually allows your testis to be located a distance away from the main body cavity. So the scrotum allows the testis to be located outside the main body cavity so that there is a lower temperature for sperm production. So apparently, sperm production requires a slightly lower temperature than the 37 degrees of your body. For a further thing to be curious about, if you want, you can ask your male friends, or for those of you all who are male, you know, when the weather gets very cold or you're in some cold water for a long time, what happens to your scrotum? Right? So that's very interesting. It has to all do with keeping the right temperature for sperm production. Alright, next we have the sperm duct, right, or the vas deferens, which is this structure here. And the sperm is produced in the testis, stored in the epididymis, and then it's transported in the sperm duct from the testis to the urethra, right, which is this tube here. So the urethra is where the sperm will move through to leave the body. And of course, the penis, who can forget the penis? It is an erectile organ that gets erect during sexual intercourse. Now, the male reproductive system also contains three important glands. We have the seminal vesicles over here, then the prostate gland over here, and finally the Cowper's gland. Okay, so when the sperm passes through the sperm duct, it will pass by the seminal vesicle first, then the prostate, then the Cowper's gland. And these three are all sex glands. So the prostate, of course, is the biggest of the three, and the one that a lot of men have problems with, prostate cancer. But these three glands together, they have a very important function, and that is to secrete a fluid that will contain enzymes and nutrients that help to nourish and keep the sperm active. Right? So it's important for the sperm to have the fluids secreted from these glands. And the fluid secreted from these glands, together with the sperm, we call that the semen. Alright, the semen. So what actually leaves the male reproductive system is the semen, a combination of sperm and fluid. Alright, just a quick point to note that in males, the urinary system is very closely associated with the reproductive system. Right, so here's our bladder, and the urine, of course, will pass out from the bladder through the urethra to outside the body. So you might be asking, wow, so both semen and urine pass through the urethra at the same time? Well, it doesn't happen. And to find out how, you can go and read a textbook, search it up somewhere. That's an interesting mechanism to prevent such a disgusting thing from happening. Alright, so here's a quick recap. You can pause the screen here just to make sure that you've got all the labels on and that you know what each part is from the front view and the side view, before we move on to the female reproductive system. Okay, so let's move on to the female reproductive system. Again, here's the front view and the side view, and the many parts that you will need to know. So let's go through them one by one. Okay, so to begin with, the ovary, very important. Ovary is there to produce eggs, the female gamete. And the ovary also produces the hormones, estrogen and progesterone, which are important for pregnancy and also for the development of female sexual characteristics at puberty, like the enlargement of breast. We also have next to the ovary the oviduct or the fallopian tube. So this is simply a muscular tube. It has a funnel-like opening here next to the ovary so that eggs from the ovary can enter the fallopian tube, and then it is transported by peristalsis actually along the oviduct towards the uterus. Now fertilization, if it happens, usually happens along the oviduct. Okay, next we have the uterus or the womb, and this is very important. It is the place where the fetus or the embryo develops. It has very muscular walls for contracting and pushing the baby out eventually. And it has a lining, the uterine lining. Uterine lining is called the endometrium as well. And that lining is where the embryo will implant itself in so that it can continue to develop during the mother's pregnancy. Now at the bottom of the uterus, you will find the cervix, which is the opening into the uterus. This allows menstrual blood, the endometrium, when it breaks down, will come out through the cervix and then out through the vagina, out of the body. Alright, so here is the vagina. It is also called the birth canal. This is the place where the semen is deposited during sex or intercourse. And the opening of the vagina is called the vulva. Alright, so here's the side view of the female reproductive system. And from here, you're going to see that the urinary system is completely separate from the reproductive system in females, right? Unlike males. Firstly, let me show you. From the side view, usually there's 3 openings that you'll find. One opening here in the front, one in the middle, and then one at the back here if they show it. So here, the front opening, this is actually to the bladder. Here's the bladder, and here's the urethra, which allows the urine out. Here, this middle opening, this would be the vagina. Alright, and of course, if you move out the vagina, then you get to the womb and the other structures. And here, the back opening would be your anus. Alright, so everything here labeled for you. Alright, so here is the front view and the side view of the female reproductive system, just to make sure you've got all of those labels in place. And you can pause here just to finish up the understanding of this and tidy up your notes. And that's all for this first video. I hope that you've gone away knowing what are the structures and of the male reproductive system and their respective functions. And the next video, we'll be looking more closely at the sperm and the egg and how they come together. Alright, so I'll see you there.